Indian dairy sector itself is one of the vast and the largest sector that is covering the rural development for a very, very long time. The state which was able to create markets for several products definitely needs to be mentioned in the success story. India have got a great amount of importance and relevance altogether when we are talking about in rural development. Various kinds of horticulture, tissue culture, all these things have been proving a success story in India. Good morning and welcome to the fifth session on Rural Development, Chapter 6. Well, we have been talking about the various factors that are governing the rural development in India. So in this session, we are going to look into the different kinds of livelihoods that is being followed and practiced in the rural areas. So quickly moving forward, we are going to talk about these topics today. Animal husbandry, a very, very important area that we need to know in terms of rural development. We're also going to talk about fisheries, and then we are going to talk about horticulture, which is covering a lot of lifespan in India. Quickly moving forward, we are going to now try to understand about animal husbandry. Now in India, if you look about 287 million in cattle, including 90 million on buffaloes, you can talk about the sheep rearing and other practices that have been going on in India. Now, Indian dairy sector itself is one of the vast and the largest sector that is covering the rural development for a very, very long time. So with all those things, milk production, dairy farming, or you're talking about cattle rearing, sheep rearing, all these factors have been an integral part of the rural development. So these are some of the livelihood options that has been helping the country to move forward. Now, if you see that the milk production in our country has increased by more than 4 times in the last almost 4 or 5 decades altogether. So from 1960 to 2002, but in 42 years, we have grown up by 4 times, which is definitely one of the best production, definitely a good improvement that we have shown in terms of development. Now, we can also see here, this can be attributed mainly to the successful implementation of Operation Flood. Let me talk about this Operation Flood to you in detail. Why? Because this was a system that was brought in order to improve the milk production in India. As we know the success story of Amul, similarly, we also need to know about Operation Flood, which was a very, very important part that started in the year 1966 in order to improve the milk production. If you look in India, about 20% of the population in the farming sector are dairy producers. So milk and milk related products are definitely a very big sector that you can count upon in terms of the GDP development. So definitely milk needs to be given attention, and milk production will definitely help us in improving the economy. So in the year 1966, we wanted to bring in Operation Flood. Of course, the word Operation Flood is more towards milk, the white flood, what we want to talk about. That is very, very important for the development, both from the nutrition standpoint as well as from the economic standpoint. So what we did is that we called all the farmers together, we pooled them together in the milk production, and we started creating cooperative societies which could help in the development of the rural economy altogether. So that's one of the reasons why you see Maharashtra and Gujarat, Haryana, some of the places where a lot of milk cooperative societies were created and they started contributing for the development of Indian economy. Now, these are all the sectors that we need to keep in mind. Why? Because they led to the path of rural independence altogether. These are all the sectors that contributed in a large manner for the development of nation. Agriculture was never independent by itself. Most of the people in India always looked at agriculture as the most dependent sector. Either financially they were dependent, morally they were dependent, physically they were dependent on so many factors. Fertilizers were not there. And people always used to look at agriculture as a weakness altogether. And that was one of the reasons why rural development was not picking up in India. But with these kind of operations, like we are bringing in policies like the Operation Flood or a green revolution, or all these factors that started leading to the new growth of the rural economy. Now, moving forward, in this system, when we are talking about the Operation Flood, the farmers are assured of a fair price and income for the supply of milk to urban markets. One of a very, very important and critical step that we need to understand. If you look into the rural economy, the one thing that was always challenging to the mind of the farmers, to the mind of the agriculturist, is that what is the price? What is the income that we are going to get by getting into this production? Is it possible that can we survive? So the government wanted to come back, assure the farmers that for whatever milk you produce, for whatever agriculture output that you're going to give, we are going to give you an assured price. We are going to give you security in terms of your income altogether. So that is why we started seeing that this became one of the most important markets for growth altogether. So the assurance in terms of income, in terms of your profession, was given by the government, and that led to the development of rural economy. Gujarat state is held as a success story for efficient implementation of milk cooperatives, which has been evaluated by many cases, many factors altogether. I would always like to mention the state of Gujarat for two reasons, because Gujarat as a state, Gujarat as a place itself has got a lot of success stories, not only about Amul, but also about different cooperative societies, which we will be discussing. But coming back to the topic here, when you look at Gujarat, the state which promoted cooperative societies to such a large extent, the state which was able to spell upon business, the state which was able to create markets for several products, definitely needs to be mentioned in the success story, definitely needs to be given high recommendation when it comes to the economic development of India. Now, when you look at Gujarat, it is not only an industrial hub, but it is also a textile hub. It is also the diamond hub of South Asia. So if you start looking at Gujarat itself, it is a business world by itself. And that's why we take Gujarat as an example for other states to evaluate and start going up. Similarly, if you look at Maharashtra, though being the financial capital of India, it is also one of the agricultural belts of India. That has also been a very good example for several states to pick up the economic development altogether. Now, if you start looking at the allied products that were coming out from the rural development or from the rural economy, meat, eggs, wool, and other byproducts. These are some of the byproducts which were having a great value in the market and was able to create millions and millions of livelihood across India. So what we see in the rural development or in the rural economy is that a push that was given by the government that started moving forward in leaps and bounds, and that started giving millions of people job altogether. So that is why I would always say that this sector needed diversification, the sector needed some sort of improvement and importance, which was identified by the government at the right time, and this made the system come forward altogether. So a fantastic rural development that was given by the government that led to the economic growth altogether. Now, moving forward, fisheries. Now, this is something not so new to India, but as a sector, it started picking up very late. Now, most of the fishing community regard water body as the mother of provider. India is surrounded by water on the southern part. That is when you start looking at the southern part of India, both on the west coast as well as the east coast, we have been blessed with a fantastic coastline. The coastline of India is somewhere roughly about 2,800 odd kilometers. So we have a beautiful coastline that has been created. And if you look at the coastline factor, we are blessed with a lot of aquatic bodies, ponds, streams, backwaters, which have been helping India in terms of rural development, because fishing and the fisherman community in India have got a great amount of importance and relevance altogether when we are talking about in rural development. Now, when you start looking here, if you start understanding the conceptual development here, the concept factor that, the fishing community and the fishermen are being able to give a lot of source, a lot of development, and this has been an integral part of the society altogether. In India, after the progressive development or increase in budgetary allocations and introduction of new techniques and methods, fishery has been given an important, in fact, we do have a ministry itself which was concentrating in terms of fishery development, and that has become a mainstream business today. So primarily, if you start understanding fishery, it is not just from the livelihood perspective, but it also has got a lot of business prominence in the long run. Presently, the fish production from the inland sources contributes about 49% of the total fish production, and if you start looking at this, contributes about 1.4% of the total GDP in India. So quite a significant impact that you need to understand and you need to study when it comes to the Fisheries Development Board altogether. Now, there are many aspects of this fishery. Why? Because one side, when you look into the coastline, that is also a promoter of tourism. The other side, it has also become a livelihood for so many people, and if you also start looking as an inland transport methodology, fisheries and the fishing community has been laying down path for a lot of rural development in India to happen. So moving forward, fisheries, if you start looking among the states, Kerala, Gujarat, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are the major producers of marine products, just because they are blessed with a coastline, and of course they have been granted with a lot of facilities and amenities. Definitely these states have been the primary states who have contributed in terms of fisheries development. The overall socio-economic status of fishermen is comparatively lower, not to forget, and than the backward sectors of the economy. This is something that was really worrisome for us. Why? Because many a times when we compare the lifestyle and the status of a fisherman in India, they are comparatively lower. They don't have much of options. Their lifestyle is little bit on the backward trend, which makes them feel on this factor that the fisherman's life needs to be improved. They need to be given more status. They need to be given more benefits and allowances. Similarly, if you see that there's a lot of underemployment, low per capita income, and that is one of the reasons why you would see that people move away from fishery. People move away from that occupation, again trying to do urban migration so that they can get better jobs in the city. Though if you see that the coastline has been a blessing to India, but there are several factors like the refugees factor. There have been a lot of clashes between India and its neighbors in the southern part. There has been a lot of misuse of funds. Similarly, the natural disasters causing a huge amount of wreck, and there's not been a positive reply from the government in terms of income or in terms of the produce. All these factors put together has made fishery take a backseat, and many of the fishermen in India would definitely like to move away from their profession, moving to urban cities, trying to seek better jobs and better living conditions altogether. So that is one of the backdrop that you see in fisheries. Now, moving forward, even though women are not involved in active fishing, but about 60% of the workforce in export marketing and 40% in internal marketing are women. A very notable point that you need to see. Though women do not directly enter into the sea for fishing, it is the men community that goes for fishing. Women are helpful and women are great in terms of marketing the products, setting up the fishing business. And if you see across the coastline, it is the women who are involved in the direct sales of fishery and fish related products altogether. So in that way, we see that the fishermen community have actively involved both men and women in terms of increasing their income. So this is something that is really recommendable, that is really appreciable in terms of the development, both from a human capital perspective and also from an economic development perspective. and there is a need to increase the credit facilities cooperatives for the fisherwomen to meet their working capital requirements and marketing. Definitely, this is probably something that is applicable to every single sector of the rural economy, and fishing is no exception to it. As in the previous sessions and classes, we were talking about the self-help group. Similarly, cooperative societies need to be set up in the area of fishermen and the local areas so that the women are able to meet up their daily capital needs, their daily financial needs, go ahead with the credit facilities so that the development can happen altogether. Now, moving forward, horticulture, one of the most exciting business that we can talk about in the Indian rural sector. You are blessed with varying climate and soil condition. India has adopted to growing diversified horticulture crops like fruits, vegetables, tuber crops, flowers, and medicinal plants all together. So India is again a country that you need to appreciate, not just because of diversity in population, but diversity in agricultural produce also. Horticulture is one of the mainstays of India, where you see hundreds and thousands of varieties of fruits and flowers that are being produced in India. Starting from the regular commercial flowers and plants to that of medicinal plants, Ayurveda, India is definitely one of the leading exporters of horticulture in the world. Now, when these crops, they play a vital role in providing food and nutrition in terms of addressing employment concerns. So that is also a very, very important factor. Now, this has been able to come back and tell you on this factor that because of the employment reasons, also horticulture is gaining a lot of prominence in the sector. The period between 91 to 2003 is definitely needs to be appreciated. Why? Because apart from Operation Flood, we also brought in a revolution in a positive sense known as the Golden Revolution. This was primarily responsible for developing the horticulture business to the next league as far as possible. And that's one of the reasons it became highly productive and sustainable livelihood altogether. So in that 13 to 14 years, we did spend some time in terms of understanding horticulture as a mainstay business, and we wanted people to invest capital in it. So we had approached, the government policy had approached the credit facilities and institutions to start promoting horticulture business. Now, on a regular basis, if you start looking at horticulture, more than 20% of the people who are involved in this are definitely women, and this is like a regular business. It does provide you with a huge opportunity in terms of marketing those flowers and vegetables. Of course, the income is slightly lesser, but then it is a regular cycle altogether. Now, moving forward, horticulture again in India has emerged as a world leader in producing variety of fruits, especially when you look at bananas, mangoes, coconuts, cashew nuts, and this is also the second larger producer of fruits and vegetables. So India has got some huge credentials when it starts coming to the business of horticulture. Not to forget it, we are one of the largest producers in the world, and we have got a lot of credentiality in producing some of the best varieties of fruits and vegetables across the globe. So the economic condition of many farmers engaged in horticulture has considerably improved, and it has become a means of improving livelihood for many underprivileged classes too. Now, this has been a source, this has been an inspiration, this has been a benchmark and a model for many farmers across India who have failed in agriculture but who have proven horticulture as a success. So they have shifted from agriculture, they have gone into horticulture, they have started seeing this as one of the stepping stones for success, and their economic conditions have definitely improved. Now, flower harvesting, nursery maintenance, hybrid flowers, and various kinds of horticulture, tissue culture, all these things have been proving a success story in India. Definitely. Why? Because though the amount of labor, amount of hard work that goes inside in terms of horticulture is definitely a big story. It is definitely a painful story because a lot of effort, a lot of work has to go into it, but the outcome is also equally good. Horticulture has definitely been one of the successful business that has been able to transform the life of people to all good levels, to all better levels altogether. This is highly remunerative employment option for women in the rural areas. So for the women who really want to come up, who really want to support their family, who really want to take up the economic activity, horticulture has definitely been one of the best options that the country has been giving them. Now, moving forward, we come to the conclusion for today's session. I hope and believe that the session was informative, educative, and interesting. In the coming sessions, we are going to learn about these professions and about these sectors in rural development in much more line and length. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today.